many different views on the origins of Freemasonry. I will present the one which I feel is the most evidenced and well documented. Modern speculative Freemasonry wasn't officially established until 1717 in London with the founding of the First Grand Lodge. Prior to that, there were Masonic lodges in the late 16th century. You first have operative Masonry involving those who would work with stone and who were part of a stone guild that built cathedrals and buildings in the Middle Ages. Around the 17th century, these operative Masons started accepting people into their craft who were not simply stoneworkers. Soon Masonry was not simply limited to stoneworkers. They then later developed into modern speculative Freemasonry of today, which involves secret handshakes, codes, symbolism, mythology, and legendary. The earliest documentation of the word Freemason is in the calendar of the coroner's rolls of the City of London. This is dated 1300-1378 AD, edited by Reginald Sharp and published in 1913. Commenting on the origins of Freemasonry, Harry Carr remarks, quote, "It developed in Britain out of the building trades and fraternities, whose history goes back some 600 years in England. I do insist, however, that our present-day speculative Freemasonry is directly descended from the operative Masonry, whose beginnings we can trace back to the earliest record of organization among Masons in 1356. As far back as 1917, as modern Masonry was already 200 years old, people were recognizing the connection Freemasonry and Theosophy had. In the 1917 work, Heresies Exposed, W. Host remarks, quote, "Freemasonry viewed doctrinally is Theosophy." With respect to the previously mentioned Zeitgeist films and the Zeitgeist movement, I will demonstrate that after a thorough study into these teachings of Theosophy and Freemasonry, it becomes quite clear that this film and movement, which has captivated so many truth seekers, is nothing more than the externalization of Theosophy, Freemasonry, and the New Age to the public. This is important because if it turns out that Zeitgeist is leading people into Theosophical and Freemasonic ideologies, it means that rather than standing against the New World Order one world government agenda, like the anti-New World Order movement is supposed to be doing, truth seekers are actually associating themselves with ideologies and organizations that are connected to the New World Order, which I will also demonstrate. I will now qualify this hypothesis since I have laid the foundation for Theosophy and Freemasonry. Theosophists and Freemasons, as part of their esoteric doctrine, taught that Jesus was the sun god, the S-U-N in the sky, and that he was based on the age of Pisces within the zodiac. The Marxist Theosophist Annie Besant taught her students, quote, "Then the sun retrograded into Pisces at the time of the birth of Jesus Christ, the Pisces influence being shown by cures performed by stepping into pools of water, Christ choosing his first apostles from fishermen," unquote. Similarly, the founder of Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, taught, quote, "Ichthus, a fish. Some of his early disciples were fishermen. Pisces, a conventional shape for the fish," unquote. The notorious Freemason, Manly Palmer Hall, taught, quote, "During the age of Pisces, the fish was the symbol of divinity, and the sun god fed the multitude with 2 small fishes." In another context, Blavatsky reinforces Theosophy's belief about Jesus, quote, "For the salvation of the world, this was the sun, shorn of his golden rays, and crowned with blackened ones, symbolizing this loss as the thorns. Jesus and even Apollonius of Tyana were but epitomizers of the history of the sun." These doctrines are very sacred to Theosophists and Freemasons. The first section of the first film, Zeitgeist, externalizes these same Theosophic and Freemasonic beliefs, fringe views that historians and scholars dismiss. Zeitgeist repeats, quote, "Jesus is the Son of God. Now Jesus is the figure who ushers in the age following Aries, the age of Pisces," unquote. Now, noticing these parallels, one might think that Peter Joseph, the creator of Zeitgeist, was ignorant of the fact that he was indoctrinating people into Theosophic and Freemasonic ideologies. However, Zeitgeist is not only spreading these doctrines of Theosophy and Freemasonry, but Zeitgeist also associates itself with prominent Theosophists, Freemasons, New Agers, and occultists in their own transcript for the film, leaving little debate as to the connection it has to these groups. Zeitgeist listed all of its sources for the film in its online transcript, and among the names of people appealed to are Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, the Freemason Albert Churchward, New Ager Acharya S., New Ager occultist and theosophical apologist Jordan Maxwell, the Druid Gerald Massey, Edward Carpenter, the socialist and acquaintance of Theosophist, Freemason and Marxist Annie Besant, the Freemason Manly P. Hall, and the Druid Godfrey Higgins, who is associated with Helena Blavatsky. The fact that Zeitgeist chooses to associate itself with these prominent Freemasons, Theosophists, New Agers, and occultists shows us why the Truth Movement should avoid them. It is a well-known fact that these same esoteric organizations have openly stated that they wish to indoctrinate the public with their esoteric religious ideas and externalize their views to humanity, eventually resulting in a new world order for the age of Aquarius, which they all await with anticipation. Let me qualify this. As Theosophy grew, it produced another prominent woman named Alice Bailey, born June 6, 1880. She is one of the most influential Theosophists, and it was her who was responsible for convincing New Agers that humanity needs to make a one-world government and one-world religion for the age of Aquarius. In order to achieve this system, she deemed it necessary to teach humanity the religion of Theosophy and Freemasonry, the same doctrines that Zeitgeist is now spreading. Speaking on the spiritual war between esotericists and people who refuse to accept the New Age, she says, quote, "It will be fought largely with mental weapons and in the world of thought. It will involve also the emotional realm from the standpoint of idealistic fanaticism. This inherent fanaticism will fight against the appearance of the coming world religion and the spread of esotericism. It must not be forgotten that only those souls who are on the probationary path or the path of discipleship will form the nucleus of the coming world religion. There is no question, therefore, that the work to be done in familiarizing the general public with the nature of the mysteries is of paramount importance at this time. When the Great One comes with his disciples and initiates, we shall have the restoration of the mysteries and their exoteric presentation as a consequence of the first initiation." Alice Bailey also reveals that Freemasonry is meant to produce advanced occultists and is in accord with the theosophical goals. Quote, "The Masonic movement, when it can be, divorced from politics and social end from its present paralyzing condition of inertia, will meet the need of those who can and should wield power. It is the custodian of the law, it is the home of the mysteries and the seat of initiation. It holds in its symbolism the ritual of deity, and the way of salvation is pictorially preserved in its work. The methods of deity are demonstrated in its temples, and under the all-seeing eye, the work can go forward. It is a far more occult organization than can be realized, and it's intended to be the training school for the coming advanced occultists," unquote.
The main source of Zeitgeist is Acharya S. She advocates one world system under the age of Aquarius. This is very interesting, as the main source that this traces back to is Alice Bailey. You can trace this to one book in particular called The Externalization of the Hierarchy, which advocates this extensively and even openly admits this in the first few pages of that volume.
In his book, The Arcana of Freemasonry, the Freemason Albert Churchward that Zeitgeist appealed to gave the following admission, quote, "Can the unity of the world be accomplished by Freemasons? Yes, and by Freemasons only." There is a common misconception about Freemasonry, and that is that many people believe it is merely a friendly fraternity where men meet up to network and socialize. This is partially true, but there are elements of Freemasonry that are not so innocent. The Freemasonic Society was infiltrated in the late 18th century by an organization called the Order of the Illuminati. There's a lot of fictional, embellished information about the Illuminati, but if you sift through all of the data, there are some very important key facts. All historians will grant that the Illuminati certainly existed in Bavaria, Germany, and that it was founded in 1776 by a man named Adam Weishaupt. This organization was a type of revolutionary organization that sought political and societal reform. The order grew and became very popular. It was then outlawed by the patriotic ruler of Bavaria, Duke Karl Theodor. He issued 3 edicts against the Illuminati, the third being in 1787. Illuminati writings were discovered after raids of castles and arrests of members. These writings were then translated from Old High German by 2 men contemporary with the Illuminati, Abe Barrel and John Robison. The writings were published in their works, Proofs of a Conspiracy, and Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism. The writings revealed that the Illuminati wanted a one-world system ruled by them, the overthrow of religion, and the infiltration of Freemasonry to achieve this, so that they could operate under another name and occupation. The founder of this order, Adam Weishaupt, stated, quote, "Do you realize sufficiently what it means to rule in a secret society, not only over lesser or more important of the populace, but over the best of men, over men of all ranks, nations, and religions, to rule without external force, to unite them indissolubly, to breathe one spirit and soul into them, men distributed over all parts of the world." The prolific Freemasonic author and historian Albert Mackey reports, quote, "To give the order a higher influence, Weishaupt connected it with the Masonic institution, after whose system of degrees and esoteric instruction and of secret modes of recognition it was organized. The order at first was very popular, and enrolled no less than 2,000 names upon its registers, among whom were some of the most distinguished men of Germany. It extended rapidly into other countries, and its lodges were to be found in France, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Poland, Hungary, and Italy. The original design of Illuminism was undoubtedly the elevation of the human race, but it cannot be denied that in the process of time, abuses had crept into the institution, and that by the influence of unworthy men, the system became corrupted. So fused with Freemasonry in the 18th century was the doctrine of elitism and globalization, the overthrow of religion, namely Christianity. The question is, did the Illuminati cease to exist after it was outlawed in Bavaria, or did it live on? According to historians like Mackey and others, the Illuminati infiltrated Masonic lodges all over Europe before it was persecuted by the Bavarian government. So with that in mind, how could the Bavarian government stop this order if it was already all over Europe? The answer is they couldn't have. The Illuminati was too big, and thus it continued under Freemasonry. The French historian Henry Martin reports, quote, "Weishaupt proposed as the end of Illuminism the abolition of property, social authority, nationality, and the return of the human race to the happy state in which it formed only a single family, without artificial needs, without useless sciences, every father being priest and magistrate." President George Washington himself was convinced that the Illuminati existed after 1785, when it was outlawed in Bavaria. He corresponded with the Reverend named G.W. Snyder, voicing his concerns about the Illuminati. This was written 13 years after the Illuminati was outlawed in Bavaria. George Washington states, quote, "I have heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plans and doctrines of the Illuminati. It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. The idea that I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies, endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first or the pernicious principles of the latter, if they are susceptible of separation, that individuals of them may have done it, or that the founder or instrument employed to found the democratic societies in the United States may have had these objects and actually had the separation of people from their government in view, is too evident to be questioned." From President Washington, we learned that he believed the Illuminati was nefarious and dangerous. He had little doubt about the Illuminati spreading to America by 1798. He was truly satisfied, or in other words, convinced of this fact. He thought it was too early for whole Masonic lodges to be striving for Illuminati objectives, but he did believe individuals within American lodges were certainly doing so. He believed the founder or instrument used to found the democratic societies in the USA may have had Illuminati objectives in mind, and that they had the separation of the people from their government in view. According to Washington, these things are too evident to be questioned. That same year, the president of Yale University, Timothy Dwight IV, spoke out against the Illuminati. Quote, "The great and good ends proposed by the Illuminati as the ultimate objects of their union are the overthrow of religion, government, and human society, civil and domestic." Joseph Willard, the president of Harvard University, said in a speech in New Hampshire, quote, "There is sufficient evidence that a number of societies of the Illuminati have been established in this land of gospel light and civil liberty, which were first organized from the Grand Society in France. They are doubtless secretly striving to undermine all our ancient institutions, civil and sacred. These societies are closely leagued with those of the same order in Europe. They have all the same objects in view. The enemies of all order are seeking our ruin. Should infidelity generally prevail, our independence would fall, of course. Our republican government would be annihilated." Speaking on this new Freemasonry that was infiltrated by Illuminati elitist doctrines, John Quincy Adams, the 6th President of the United States, remarked, quote, "I do conscientiously and sincerely believe that the order of Freemasonry, if not the greatest, is one of the greatest moral and political evils." Because this Illuminati doctrine of globalization and societal reform was fused into Freemasonry, later prominent Masons started voicing their anticipation of a new world order, one world system.
Freemasonry is just one of many ways to get people into the occult. But even more than that, it's able to get them into a really sort of packaged way to produce people that can be used in a more mechanical way of the system. That is, that they can be put into places of power to turn a lot of the gears and things like that.
Let me demonstrate that the high levels of Freemasonry and Theosophy are now simultaneously striving for a new world order, one world religion. Their dogma is that for the upcoming age of Aquarius, humanity needs to unite into a one world government or new world order. The former Supreme Grand Master of the Fraternity of the Rosy Cross, or FRC, Reuben Swinburne Clymer, wrote in his work Ancient Mystic Oriental Freemasonry, quote, "Mystic Masonry is not only the key to the religion taught to all men in all ages from the very beginning of conscious life up to the present, but it holds the keys to these religious and is, in fact, the very repository of religion itself. It has for its object the uniting of mankind into a universal brotherhood." The 19th and 20th century Freemason and Rosicrucian Arthur Edward Waite admitted that secret societies he was involved with control political, scientific, and religious affairs. Waite believed that these societies always existed in every nation and are connected to modern societies, which I believe can be disputed. But nonetheless, he stated the following in his work, The Real History of the Rosicrucians, quote, "Beneath the broad tide of human history, there flow the stealthy undercurrents of the secret societies, which frequently determine in the depths the changes that take place upon the surface. These societies have existed in all ages and among all nations, and tradition has invariably ascribed to them the possession of important knowledge in a religious, scientific, or political order according to the various character of their pretensions," unquote. The official Freemasonic Scottish Rite magazine, entitled The New Age Magazine, admits that it is for a new world order, new world religion, and new age. Quote, "Great God our King has chosen the great American public schools to pave the way for the new race, the new religion, and the new civilization that is taking place in America. Any mother, father, or guardian who is responsible for the taking away of the freedom of mind, freedom of will, or freedom of spirit is the lowest criminal on earth, because they take away from that child the God-given right to become part of God's great plan in America for the dawn of the new age of the world." 33rd degree Freemason Manly Palmer Hall advocated world government, quote, "The new Atlantis sets forth an ideal government of the earth. It foretells that day when in the midst of men there shall rise up a vast institution composed of the philosophic elect, an order of illumined men band together for the purpose of investigating the laws of life and the mysteries of the universe. The age of boundaries is closing, and we are approaching a nobler era when nations shall be no more, when the lines of race and caste shall be wiped out, when the whole earth shall be under one order, one government, one administrative body, unquote. Alice Bailey, the prominent theosophist, stated, quote, "The new era is coming, the new ideals, the new civilization, the new modes of life, of education, of religious presentation, and of government are slowly precipitating, and nothing can stop them." N. Sri Ram, a prominent theosophist and New World Order advocate, stated, quote, "Let us first consider the restoration of the mysteries. It is well known among members of the co-Masonic movement that its work has been faithfully continued up to the present, and that its number of lodges has steadily increased. I imagine that at such an auspicious time, when the inner and outer worlds will have come much nearer together, some of the great leaders of the hierarchy might take part in the outer work of reconstruction, and will then become the recognized leaders of the new world government," unquote.
This was written by Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall was both a Grand Master within Freemasonry, and he was a Grand Master in the Illuminati. And he says, "All of sincere heart will find consolation in the conviction that powers beyond and above human corruption continue to administer the destiny of the globe. It would be a mistake to confuse the governing bodies with the various sects which pretend to authority, but give no indication or proof that they can manage efficiently even their own affairs." Now, Manly P. Hall knows who he's referring to here because he's part of that secret body. But of course, he speaks positively of it.
The Zeitgeist films and movement have more ties to theosophy and Freemasonry. At just 2 minutes into the second Zeitgeist film, Zeitgeist Addendum, a lecture of a man by the name of Jiddu Krishnamurti is played. Jiddu spent much of his childhood in southern India. Jiddu's father was a member of the Theosophical Society in southern India. When Jiddu was a boy, he was discovered by the theosophist C.W. Ledbetter. Ledbetter was a man who was brought up on charges of immoral behavior with young boys, yet he still had a close relationship with the president of Theosophy, Annie Besant. Ledbetter and Besant would adopt Jiddu and take him to England. They raised him and brainwashed him into the theosophic esoteric teachings. They were convinced that he was their return of the Christ and that he would lead humanity into the age of Aquarius as the world teacher for the new age. Jiddu thought he was the Christ for many years due to being brainwashed, and he would give lectures speaking with authority on esoteric and occult matters. However, Jiddu became reluctant and after many years decided not to be the Christ of Theosophy. He was a false Christ, and he later departed from Theosophy. He did retain connection with Theosophists and devoted the later part of his life to giving lectures on New Age spirituality. He authored many books on the subject as well. The fact that Zeitgeist would include this man in their film, knowing his deep connection with Theosophy, should demonstrate to everyone the New Age esoteric nature of the Zeitgeist films and movement.